Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, on Dr. Martin Luther King Day, a day when we are honoring the legacy of Dr. King and the civil rights movement, the Trump administration released their 1776 Commission report, and in that report, they attacked the civil rights movement. On a day when we are to honor the civil rights movement, you had the Trump administration attack the civil rights movement by talking about how the movement immediately turned to programs that ran counter to the lofty ideals of the founders, the founding fathers. That's what they're talking about. They're suggesting that the civil rights movement adopted programs that were un American and contrary to American values and principles. And then this report goes on to uh, gloss over the history of slavery in America. This report goes on to gloss over the hypocrisy of the founding fathers of this country. It tries to suggest that the American Revolution helped usher in an end to slavery in this country. This report goes on to say this. It says the American Revolution. It talks about the American Revolution. It say slavery was swept away in America by forces unleashed by the American Revolution, which is it went on to describe as this marked a dramatic sea change in the moral sensibilities of this country. That's what they described this American Revolution as if it was responsible for the end of slavery in America. And when you look at the American Revolution, which took place in 1776, that's when this nation gained its independence. Well, after that period, you know, close to 100 years, like about 90 years after that period, black people continue to be held in bondage despite that American Revolution. And it reminds me of that powerful speech that Brother Frederick Douglass gave when he talked about what is the 4th of July to a slave. The American Revolution meant nothing for the slave. The slave was not freed when America gained its independence from the British. The slave continued to be enslaved. So, this notion that the American Revolution ushered in some new sensibilities is nonsense because black people weren't even regarded as human beings after that revolution. In all those decades after that revolution, black people continued to be held in bondage. Another thing that this report tries to do is it tries to defend these hypocritical founding fathers, by suggesting that despite the fact that they owned slaves, that somehow they had hatred towards slavery, they hated slavery and all that kind of stuff, which is absolutely absurd. You had people like George Jefferson owning all these slaves, people like not George Jefferson, George Washington owning many slaves, people like Thomas Jefferson owning many slaves, hundreds of slaves. If you go to the one of those national museums in D.C., they have an exhibit that features the statue of Thomas Jefferson. And next to that statue, they have all the names of all the people that this man enslaved. All the names and stuff like that. You can't possibly hate slavery when you are enslaving hundreds of people. You can't hate slavery when you are engaging in the enslavement of black people. But you have this report that's trying to rewrite history and trying to suggest that these people weren't hypocrites, that they didn't enjoy enslaving black people and all that kind of stuff. How can you say that when they enslaved hundreds of black people? While they were writing these great documents about liberty and about pursuit of happiness, they were enslaving and brutalizing and humiliating and dehumanizing black people. That hypocrisy has to be called out. And this article in the New York Times points out that no historian would take this commission report seriously because it's ahistorical, it's non-factual, it is a complete distortion and rewriting of American history. And it's just a shame, but it's not surprising that this Trump administration would do something like this on a day when we are supposed to be honoring the legacy of the Civil